What's up, everybody? Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down questions that you need answers or big misconceptions that hold you back from ranking up. So if you want to rank up, you got to watch this at the end of the video. And go to the GameLeap website down below for high-quality VODs. If you want to see step-by-step the decision-making in high-ranked games, you got to go check it out down below. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now, the first big question that I'm getting a lot, and it's super important for your development as a player, is high sense versus low sense. There's a lot of people that really are not sure if their sensitivity is just way too high to be feasible. Should they be rocking with a low sense or a high sense? And is there actually an incorrect sensitivity that could be holding you back? Well, let's actually talk about some pro numbers so we have a decent benchmark. Some players like Hiko with some of the highest EDPI in the entire game, which is multiplied your DPI, your mouse DPI, multiplied by your in-game sense. He has an EDPI of over 550, and a lot of players are rocking in that 200 range, so somewhere in between there is a reasonable amount of sensitivity, according to pros at least, or the pros that currently exist in Valorant. Now, that being said, is there such a thing as too high of a sensitivity if you're like far above someone like Hiko? Well, it's important to understand just because high sensitivity to an extent above that hasn't really been seen in the pro Valorant scene doesn't mean it couldn't exist. There are CSGO players, for instance, like Woxic, who have something akin to about double of what Hiko's sense would be, somewhere in the 1000 EDPI range if he did play Valorant, transitioning over from CS. That's important to point out that he's a crazy corner case, and most of the time, people that play at incredibly high sensitivity often were raised in situations where they had no choice. They were playing on a really tiny desk, they had the tiniest freaking mouse pad available, and they basically had to learn to play on high sense, and then they just stuck with it even later on when they could afford, you know, bigger desks and mouse pads and things like that. But if you could choose what sensitivity you're gonna pick as you grind, typically something more reasonable is going to be better off for you, somewhere in that 200 to 400 EDPI range. And the reason that you do this is it's going to be a lot easier for you to control, a lot easier for you to develop, and some micro adjustments are going to be a lot more feasible, because if you have too high of a sense, it's just very, very hard to put all of that axis of moving on your wrist, rather than allowing your fingers to control the really tiny amounts of movement, your wrist to control the medium amounts of movement, and your arm to be used for the giant large amounts of movement that don't need to be delicate or concise. You're basically putting it all on your wrist, your fingers, which definitely makes it a lot more difficult, not impossible. So I honestly think if you're not already a really high rank or really nutty mechanically as is, you might want to rethink what your sensitivity is in the first place to further your development down the line, or make sure that you don't hit any walls down the line. Now, the next big question that gets asked a lot, and it's always about equipment. Will my equipment actually make me rank up? People don't have all the equipment they want, and they think, hey, I can't possibly climb to X rank because my equipment absolutely sucks. Now, the question is, does your equipment actually matter? And typically, it's not really going to make or break a player. Well, yes, it can benefit you. It is really gonna make the immediate difference in a full rank up worth of skill, but it can aid in your development as a player over the longevity of your time in the game, as well as make it more enjoyable for you. Let's talk through some of the equipment and how much they actually matter. A mouse can be important, especially if you have a very terrible mouse. Remember, I highly suggest having a light mouse, because the heavier your mouse is, the more pressure you're gonna actually have to push on it in order to move it, and that's just more tension that is unnecessary. Lighter the better, and then on top of that, having less buttons on the mouse is also better, because adding extra pressure to your fingers while you're using the mouse is definitely gonna inversely affect your aim. Monitor, of course, you want a high refresh rate. I think this is one of the most important things. While I don't necessarily think that you're gonna have huge changes past that 144 hertz, definitely going from that 60 hertz to 144 hertz is a huge deal, and then anything under 60 is really going to actually hurt your development as a player, and I highly suggest doing whatever you can to at least get to those 60 frames. Mousepad, of course, high quality. I don't think it necessarily matters. It's going to be pretty personal preference, but having a really garbage mousepad can definitely hurt you, so definitely keep that in mind. Gaming chair, of course, is one of the most important things. I mean, you have a gaming chair, you just headshot everyone, and the last equipment that really matters is a wedding ring, because remember, it's the married man meta. You got to get married or you get carried, right? No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, let's talk about the last question that a lot of people ask, and it's so damn important to really figure this out, because how do you climb versus all these smurfs? A lot of people keep running into Smurfs, they keep running into people that absolutely shit on them, and they're like, how am I supposed to get out of iron, silver, gold if I keep running into these Smurfs? It just feels freaking impossible. Now, honestly, this is a difficult question because I really want to tell you that Smurfs don't exist and you're making it all up and you just need to push through, but that's just not true. There are Smurfs all over the place for whatever reason, whether it's people just wanting to just get their ego in or play with their friends and Riot not doing anything about it. There are a lot of Smurfs and they filter around every single rank. That being said, it becomes incredibly easy to blame every single loss that you get on Smurfs, and this is honestly the easiest way to completely halt your progress. Every game you win, you're a god and you popped off, and every game you lose, it's because there was a Smurf on the enemy team. But some percentage of the time, that's not going to be true, and even if it is true, it actually benefits you to not use the blame on Smurf thing as a crutch because it's just going to prevent you forever looking at your mistakes. The most important thing is always consistency, because if you are consistently performing at a high level, at some point you will stop running into these Smurfs. So you'll get some of these on your team, or there'll be no Smurfs in the lobby, and then your consistency will shine through. But it's about that consistent effort, because you can't control what games have Smurfs, what games don't, but you can only control how you perform in all the games regardless. Remember, you're the consistent, you're that constant, and these Smurfs all around you are just extra variables that get added to any game, along with having good or bad teammates, having good or bad team compositions. The list goes on and on. Now, while I'm also saying to work on your mistakes and make sure that you don't use these Smurfs as a crutch that is just going to kind of make you feel better, I also don't want you to be too hard on yourselves when you get rolled in a rank that you feel like you shouldn't get rolled in, right? Let's say you played pretty well in like Plat the previous season, you go down to gold, and you got shit on by someone on the enemy team. It doesn't do anyone any favors to be super hard on yourself, like, oh, why did I get shit on? What the heck? It could possibly be a Smurf, or maybe you're just feeling off that day. The best thing that you could do is just work on your own individual impact, overcome whoever is in front of you, and whether they may or may not be a Smurf, just move on and try to improve from there. Don't harp on your wins or losses, and use every single game as a means to get better so that you'll win the next one. Now go to the GameLeap website down below for high quality in-depth VOD reviews and tips and tricks that you won't find anywhere else. You gotta go check it out. It's freaking stacked. But that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for coming by. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.